Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jenna Bush Hager, Barbara Pierce Bush, and Elizabeth Chambers.
Good evening, everyone. My name's John Highbush, and I have the honor tonight being the executive director of the the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation. I used to be the director. Volume, please. Volume. Great. How's that? Good. In honor of our men and women in uniform who defend us around the world, if you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Before we get started, there is a couple I'd like to recognize in the audience tonight from our very important Board of Trustees, and that would be Ben Sutton and his wife, Sally. Ben, thank you for coming. Well, I personally have been looking forward to this day for quite some time. I say that because I'm fortunate to have something in common with the two incredible women that I'm about to welcome to the stage. They of course, over their lifetimes have gone by the name of Bush. I go by the name of Highbush. But the resemblance does not stop there. All three of us have spent our lives looking up to someone by the name of President George H.W. Bush. I had the incredible opportunity to work in his administration when he entered office in 1989. They have had the incredible opportunity to be his granddaughters starting 8 years earlier in 1981. The three of us have also greatly admired for many years someone by the name of President George W. Bush. They've looked up to him as a father for, well, in 2 weeks it will be 36 years. I have to admit they are probably a tad bit closer to him than I am, but I have had the honor to welcome their father to the Reagan Library a couple of times during his 5 visits here over the years. And definitely not to be forgotten, there is the woman the three of us know and admire and love. No doubt, again, they are just a tad bit more familiar with her than I. She, like their father, shaped them to be the incredible people they are. Of course, I'm speaking of Laura Bush, a wonderful First Lady. She was kind enough to let me introduce her here when she paid a visit to another great First Lady by the name of Nancy Reagan. She too has authored an appropriately titled great book that I recommend called Spoken from the Heart. So it is only natural, after visits by the former Presidents Bush and First Lady Laura Bush, that we would make room, as it were, for their granddaughters and daughters to talk about their book, Sisters First. But before we get started, I have to say that I'm envious of someone. That someone goes by the name of Elizabeth Chambers, a successful actress, entrepreneur, and in my book, a famous chef, baker, a judge on the Food Network's Cupcake Wars. I am envious of Elizabeth because she is with us this evening to moderate a discussion with these two women with which I have so much in common, but have met today for the very first time. They, of course, go by the names of Barbara Pierce Bush and Jenna Bush Hager. What a treat it is to have them. I have no intention of stealing Elizabeth's thunder, but suffice it to say that our special guests tonight have become known for the success that goes far, far beyond their roles as presidential first children. With certainty, I notice these very special roles, such as the NBC Today Show correspondent, author of children's books and mother of two, Jenna. And for you, Barbara, the co-founder and CEO of the Global Health Corps, mobilizing thousands of young leaders around the world who are building a movement for health equity. I know we'll be hearing more about that tonight, so I apologize for savoring the moment as a fellow Bush. These are two very special women. Evidence of that, before they come up, if I may, if I would turn your attention to the screens behind me.
It's been so much fun. It's been such a fun process, and I think it's been good for us as sissies and a lot of fun to remember, have a reason to remember all these stories that we hadn't thought of.
I don't know where I am going, but I know that I'm going with you.
This little sampler of the book. People would say, that must have been so hard. And I'm like, no, it's not that hard, you know? Magnificent ocean and his wild crew of family members gleefully racing to the welcoming shelter of our home port with him.
As long as I'm with you, then nothing could be wrong. It's right where we belong.
I feel like now is a good time for women to come together to celebrate each other.
Yeah.
And that's what you've always done for me. Celebrate me.
Celebrate you.
Have I celebrated you?
You've celebrated
That's
me.
what you're supposed to say.
I knew you were going to.
You too have celebrated me, sissy, but you just are elusive and you held that back for some reason.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the Reagan Library, Jenna and Barbara Bush.
Thank you for having us.
Does it matter? Oh, well, thank you all so much.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
You guys, we are so happy to be here. And I don't know how many of y'all have read the book yet, but you are in for such a treat because I could not put it down. I literally started reading. I'm in traffic. I know you're not supposed to text and drive, but how did they feel about reading and driving? Because I was doing it all week long.
You were reading and driving?
I mean, at stoplights, at stoplights, at stoplights. I was very safe, but it's just one of those books that you can't put down. As a mother, as a daughter, it just, I have to tell you, it reminds you of what's important. And it's those memories and those moments. And we have questions from the audience, but I have so many things I just want to talk to y'all about because Jen and I went to school together. We've been friends since college, and it was just incredible to read both of your words and experiences from day one.
Oh, thank you, Elizabeth.
Of course. I couldn't be more proud of you. So I just wanted to kind of, first and foremost, I told my sister, we have to sit down and talk about all of our memories. She was really not excited to get this phone call. She's like, what are you doing? Where is this coming from? But how was it for you two to sit down and write it together? I'm sure it was frustrating at times, cathartic.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that.
It was so much fun. It took the elusive sister a little more time.
I was a little bit more hesitant to say yes to writing a book because I like to be private.
And now she's written her stories. But I think there were so many unexpected benefits of it. One, you know, we have this time together. We're on the road for the last couple weeks, and it's been so much fun. The other thing that we didn't expect, we titled the book Stories from Our Wild and Wonderful Life. And when we said wild, the publisher was like, well, I mean, they're gonna think you mean when you were wild. And we were like,
yeah, we know.
We know. But what's been empowering, and this isn't the reason why we did it, but an unexpected benefit is that we've taken back the word wild. I mean, life is wild. The fact that we're here with all of you all is wild. The way that our lives have turned is wild. And so that's been a really fun part. And then I think also it's largely a love letter to each other. Mm-hmm. So to remember all these stories has been this wonderful gift, really. And do you want to talk about why?
Yes, it's been so much fun. Once I became comfortable with actually writing the book, then it was a blast. We knew that if we were going to write it, then we needed to be authentic and vulnerable and share both the incredible parts of our lives and then also the bits that have been more challenging because, of course, you grow more when things are challenging. And so it was important to us that we be very authentic and own all the experiences that we've had. And what's been so lucky for us is that we've had someone by our side in everything that we've done, whether it's been bigger experiences that y'all all remember, like elections and inaugurations, or smaller moments that were big to us, but no one would have ever noticed. We've had a partner to walk through life with, which is so lucky. And so if you look at the first page, we actually started with a poem called The Summer Day. It's by Mary Oliver, and we used it because when we were younger, our mom's mom, Jenna Welch, lives in Midland, Texas. She's a little bitty woman who's 97 years old. And when we were little, we lived in Midland also, and we would go over to her house at night because it was about 120 degrees during the day in Midland, Texas. So our mom would give us dinner, and we would take showers and get in our nightgowns and go over to my grandmother's house, and she would put a blanket in the front yard. And she had taught herself all the constellations. She was formally uneducated, but not uneducated in the slightest. And she would point out all the stars and the constellations to us as 5-year-olds and read us poetry. And we loved this poem. It ends, "Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" And that is why we used this subtitle, because our life has been wild and precious, and wild in ways that are not margarita wild, though it's been that too.
Not as wild as you all think, sort of boring.
Yeah, probably more boring than you think, but wild just that we've gotten to travel the world and meet so many people and have so many incredible experiences with each other and our family.
And in the book, you really talk about kind of your differences. Everyone thinks twins and love to kind of put you in categories. Can you describe each other to the audience and sort of some things that we might not know about you and about your sister?
Sure. Well, that's been one of the fun parts too, while writing. We realized that, the world has these perceptions of our entire family, or the family that is the public family, and they're not all true. And I think more and more, because maybe of the rise of social media, it's easier to just characterize somebody in a couple words, like use 2 or 3 adjectives to describe somebody instead of really getting to know them fully. And the way the conversation is in our country, with it being so divisive, people aren't really stopping to listen. And so that was an unexpected part of writing it too, is that we could fill out our parents. We could write about them and our grandparents. But also, because we're twins, for some reason, people think that we need to be the inverse of each other, and probably because we look so different. She's the brown-haired one, I'm the blonde-haired one. And somebody even recently was like, "You were the troublemaker, right?" And I was like, "And your sister, she's good, right?"
You're like, "She was there with me."
Yes, I was like, the second time, she's the one that bought the margarita. Just kidding. Just joking. But I mean, she's also a troublemaker in the wonderful ways. So Barbara, people think so they'll say to me, "She's so shy, right?" And she's not at all. She's unbelievably outgoing. It's just that I'm more public, as Barbara said. So I think people think she must be quiet because I'm not. But she's really independent. She started a global health nonprofit, which maybe she'll talk about later. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Oh, thanks.
Her commute is to Rwanda, so that, I don't think an introvert would do that. I mean, although, part of her life is introverted, but she's far more independent than I am. And so that's sort of the inverse. When you're compared by the world, because we're twins, it's like, if I'm loud, she must be quiet. She's not very quiet. And she's a troublemaker in her own way.
In my own quiet way. Y'all will not be surprised by how I would describe Jenna, in that she is extremely fun. I mean, I have a sister who has made my life so extremely fun. She loves making people laugh. She loves entertaining them. I'm not at all surprised she ended up on the Today Show, even though that didn't seem like her career path, because she loves bringing joy to people's life. When we were younger, she was desperate to be an entertainer, but she really had her sights set on Broadway. And my mom and my sister and I would drive around in my mom's minivan because Jenna was desperate to be in Les Miserables. She really wanted to be young Cosette.
Little Cosette. Who
And
didn't?
so
Who doesn't? I think she still does, let's be honest.
we would go to as many local theater auditions as possible for Jenna because she was desperate to perform.
Unfortunately, I was like a well-fed, tanned Texan, and I was like, what about this does not scream the French Revolution? And a lot of it didn't scream it, but they never gave up hope, even though I never got the part.
No, I always thought she was going to get it one year. She had an old-time broom that she would sweep around while she sang. But she is just fun and joyful, and it takes just as much energy to be negative as it does to be positive, and that's made my life so much fun.
I love that. What was this aha? Was there an aha moment? Had you guys talked about writing a book together for a long time? How did you decide once and for all we're going forward with this?
Mm-hmm. Well, we always daydreamed about writing a book. When Jenna was pregnant with her second daughter, Poppy, we were trying to get Mila, her older daughter, excited about having a sister. And we lived 4 blocks away from each other, so I'd go over all the time and we'd be like, Mila, we're sissies, and we wanted her to get excited. And so we always kind of daydreamed about writing a children's book about being sisters, and also because it seemed a little bit easier to write. And
Children's book for ease.
20 pages. And then exactly a year ago, actually, on election day, I went over to Jenna's to watch the election results come in, and her husband was out of town, and it got later and later and later, so I ended up spending the night with her, and we woke up the next morning in bed, as we had on many the day after elections, and her daughter Mila came in and woke us up, and I think it scared the dickens out of her. That
I love
was
that
like,
you just said the word dickens.
I was like, what is not a curse word?
That's, exactly how Grammy would have talked, but
I was gonna say,
scared the dickens out of her. Never heard you say that.
well, I was thinking, I was like, oh no, I was gonna say a different word, and it didn't seem proper.
No, this is a regal crowd.
This is a regal crowd.
Yes.
So anyway, I think it scared the dickens out of Mila. She came in and was like, Auntie Barbara? Where I was lying where her dad usually lies.
She was like, Daddy, what's wrong with your hair,
Anyway, on that day is actually when we had our first meeting about writing a book, which we thought was going to be a children's book. And on that day, we were much more reflective about how lucky we have been to have someone to wake up, on so many election days together, and really we've always valued our sisterhood, but we had a moment to reflect on how much we valued it. And so we ended up wanting to share our stories after that. And I think kind of a bigger theme is we were disappointed with how women were portrayed over the past year and a half in the media. There was a lot of talk about how women looked during the election on both sides, and things that just felt like shouldn't be the conversation around women in 2017. And so it was also meaningful to us to be able to share our stories because we've had someone that's had our back through everything we've done and believed that we were enough, which has allowed us to be more brave in everything that we have tried to pursue.
And maybe if all women, whether you have blood sisters or friends or colleagues, lifted each other up the way that Barbara's lifted me up, that, I think the world would be a better place.
Absolutely. There's a sisterhood in so many ways.
Yeah.
I learned so much about both of you reading the book. There's so many surprising tidbits, but what do you think will surprise readers the most?
The comedic foil.
It's Jenna's husband, Henry.
My husband. Henry was like, why?
We roast him.
Sort of, and I roast myself. Are you going to read about Dad?
Yeah, well, I think what has seemed surprising to people now that we've talked to them that have read the book is, Jenna referred to this earlier, we've had a chance to kind of fill in those that we love very deeply that everyone knows but may not know very well. Obviously our dad is very well known, as is our mom, but it's only part of them that people know because it's what you would read in the headlines and often what you would take as fact. And so I think that's been fun for us to show other sides of those that we love.
Mm-hmm. With Henry, what was fun is, and with the whole book, was looking back at articles that were written about us or about Barbara and me that before we would have probably ignored or laughed at, and I'll read one after Barbara does this.
So this is about my dad, and I got to read this in front of him 2 days ago, and it made him cry, so it felt like a real victory. This is recent. This is from a few years ago in my life. When I had my first devastating heartbreak in my early 30s, I'd ride the subway, wondering if anyone could see that inside my chest, my heart was torn in two. And when my heart hurt so badly, I couldn't help but wonder how many other people riding the subway felt the same. How many others were wandering the city with broken hearts. My dad was the first person I called after that breakup. I don't know why. I never shared much about my relationships with him. I'm private like my mother. But through it all, struggling to hold the belief that someone could be wonderful while also understanding you shouldn't build the rest of your life with them, I relied on my dad. And daily he would call or text, just to check in, just to share the burden with me. He didn't make promises of things getting better or the relationship ultimately working out. But he shared that while my heart hurt now, it would not always feel that way. Every morning, I would wake to a text from him just saying hi, his usual love you, baby, and in a small way, affirming that heartbreak hurts and that is okay. I picked up the pieces, but he never stopped texting every morning. Every night, I read a meditation, a short modern-day interpretation of a Christian Bible verse meant as a form of silent prayer before I doze off. And every morning, he rereads the same meditation from the same book, texting me the verse, which he has illustrated by emojis. I text back my own emoji picture. It is short and it is daily. 5:30 a.m. Texas time, 6:30 a.m. New York time, waiting there for me when I open my eyes. It is so simple, and yet it is everything.
One of the funny things about doing this was reading, as I said, was reading these articles. One thing about Henry, which makes it a miracle that we're still together.
If you read the book, you will be thrilled they're still together.
Or no, that we ever ended up together, right?
I mean, a number of things happened at the beginning which could have been difficult.
Yes. So one of the things that happened is that I proposed to him after 3 months.
I was standing there. We were at a holiday party. Henry was in the holiday spirit.
Maybe overcome by a holiday cocktail.
Maybe overcome by a holiday cocktail. And he looked at Jenna and he told her that he loved her. And then he immediately turned red and he did love her, but it was clear that he wasn't intending to let that slip that night.
Yeah,
and he covered his mouth. And I was standing there and I watched it all in slow motion. And Jenna says, I love you too. Let's get married.
I know.
And
it's a miracle.
I walked away. I was like, I don't know which way this is going to go, but I need to remove myself.
So a few years later, we were yet to be married, and
They were yet to be engaged.
correct. You don't have to rub it in.
Just giving context.
Okay, correct. And I was a teacher in DC, and Henry was like, let's go to dinner. And I was moving to Latin America, and he was going to business school. And I was like, listen, I don't have to move to Latin America. If you want to propose to me, I will stay right here. And he was like, have a
wonderful time in life. It was sort of a reverse ultimatum. I don't know.
It was a reverse ultimatum. I find them to be less harsh and threatening. But anyway, so he asked me to go to dinner on a Tuesday night to kind of a fancy restaurant, which is not very much like my husband. And he also, where we went, had organic fortune cookies. And Henry had put in an order like probably 1 hour before we went, typical. And so the fortune cookies weren't ready. And I had said, if you ask me to stay, I'll stay. So at the end of the meal comes out, and I already thought it was suspect. I'm like, why are we going out on a Tuesday night to a fancy restaurant? Like, could this be the moment? And he sent out, because the fortune cookies weren't ready, 2 champagne glasses come out at the end of the meal. And Henry's not really a champagne guy. And tied around one was a little piece of paper with a note that said, don't go, stay here. So they also got his fortune wrong. It was supposed to say, when you go, and when you come back, I'll be here. So all of this. So Obviously, you know my reaction, but this is what happens. When your dad is in the White House, it's not just you and your boyfriend having a conversation in a restaurant. It's you, your boyfriend, and every other patron within earshot. The two women sitting next to us called the Washington Post and relayed the whole moment, including apparently the views of what we ate. So 2 mornings later, I woke up to this. A champagne bottle was popped. The question was not. No, it's so amazing. Jenna Bush has been stepping out with Henry Hager for 1.5 years now, a point when any young couple might start mulling questions about the future. So it's natural that there may have been a little frisson as they sat down Tuesday to dinner at Asia Nora. The 24-year-old teacher beaded light green tunic, dark slacks. And her beau, who turns 28 next week, ordered a lavish meal, although I can promise you, if Henry was paying, it was not lavish. Even though I love him, but it's just true. Fellow patrons said, as they shared a chocolate mousse, the waitstaff brought champagne, Jenna's flute with a mysterious note taped to the bottom. She read it and burst out laughing. "I thought you were proposing," she hollered. "I nearly, in parentheses, soiled my pants." I'm sorry, y'all. I know that's
She's
not...
just reading from the paper.
Yes, I did not say that. Who knows what the note said? Witnesses gleaned that it was an inside joke Henry wanted to deliver in a fortune cookie, but didn't get it ordered in time. The restaurant's not saying. So that was a fun article to pop back up.
To reread?
Yes, after 10 years. Anyway, not sure how that flowed together.
Okay, no, Sisters First covers your life from childhood to now, a much simpler time than strangers eavesdropping on your non-proposal. Talk to me a little bit about your childhood, because to me it was just seems so idyllic, and what dreams are made of, what memories are made of.
Yeah. Well, we have lived this very dual life. We've lived both an extremely extraordinary life. Obviously, our dad and our grandfather were president. And then a very ordinary life. We spent much more time with my mom's side of the family, Jenna, who I mentioned earlier, and Harold Welch, who lived in Midland, and they don't have an airport named after them, so no one's probably ever heard of Harold and Jenna, except for us. And our day-to-day was spent in Texas, going over to our grandparents every night, as I said, to watch the stars and riding bikes. And I mean, we had a constant playmate built in since we were twins. And just playing and riding bikes to our big high school. And then on vacations, we would get to see our grandparents in DC. We would go there for Christmas with all of our cousins. And actually, we always were extremely close with our cousins and aunts and uncles, because we always had an excuse to get together every holiday, because there were always enough bedrooms at the White House. So we saw each other every year. So we, spent every Christmas and every summer with them, which was a lot of fun.
But our grandparents were so... Do you have something you want to read? You were looking
No,
at
I was looking, trying to think.
book
I mean, I think the
longing.
thing that...
You were looking at that book longingly. I don't
I
want to
love
take it
that
away from
book.
you. One of the things is when we were with our other grandparents, who y'all all know, they were so present because there wasn't smartphones. So, they worked, and then when they weren't working, they were with us. And so we didn't even know.
We did not. I had no idea. I thought everyone's grandfather became president. I did not think that it was our grandfather that was president.
Or only our grandfather.
I thought that once you became a grandfather, because we love grandfathers in the United States, they became president.
And you celebrate them with an inauguration.
And you celebrate them with an inauguration. So I was so excited when we went to our grandfather's inauguration. We were 7, and it was so much fun, and there's a parade, and there's balloons and confetti and glitter. That's when we were campaigning with our grandfather on Halloween. Those were our costumes.
Juicy Fruit, it was a very 90s costume.
It
or
was.
80s.
But we
late
actually
80s.
rediscovered Juicy Fruit today, and I'd like to urge you all to reconsider Juicy Fruit. We really liked it. Anyway, I was so excited after my grandfather's inauguration, because I thought, oh my gosh, I get to go to 20 other inaugurations now. I thought all my friends, it was a real letdown when I got home, and I asked my best friend, Catherine Oliver, when her grandfather's inauguration was. And I found out that actually it was our grandfather.
I love that so much.
And Barbara also had the responsibility of being a little girl with a very large name. And we actually challenged our mother because our mom was like, I didn't know the Ganny was going to be famous. I'm sorry, you know, I didn't mean to burden you with the name Barbara Bush. And we were like, Mom, she was the vice president's wife when we were born. Like, yes, you knew she was going to be like kind of famous. Like, you didn't know that she was going to be the president's wife, but like there was a slight possibility. That's the track, is it not?
Yeah, that would be the next step to pursue.
Right.
So.
Oh, cute.
Oh,
So cute.
And that's Jenna.
yeah, that's our mom's mom.
That's Jenna, who I'm named after.
Barbara, you talk about calling Domino's to place an order and literally being hung up on numerous times because they thought you were prank calling.
Yes, often in my childhood I would, this is so sad, call to order pizza. And they'd say, who's the order for? And I'd be like, some Canadian bacon for Barbara Bush, please. And our grandmother was the first lady, and they would hang up on me every time. And I didn't know why.
Because they thought she was prank calling. It wasn't the Canadian bacon that turned them off.
I do write about, so the name has continued to be complicated throughout my life. I obviously love my grandmother, and I'm thrilled to have her name, and, you know, couldn't love my name more, but it has followed me consistently. So, you know, that happened. I showed up to give a talk about Global Health Corps 2 years ago, and when I arrived, everyone ignored me, which I thought was sort of
Rude.
odd.
Kind of rude.
And I kind of floated around thinking the organizer of this event certainly will find the speaker. I'm just going to float. And someone came up to me and they said, so you're her intern? And I was thinking, like, no, I don't have an intern. And they had thought my grandmother was coming to give the talk. So that was a great moment. But it's proved to be very hilarious for all of our family members, too.
This is a risky story.
This is a risky story, but
you're
I'm
gonna
feeling
do it.
risky.
I know. Okay, go ahead. See, this is what I told you. She's more of the troublemaker.
Well, it's in the book. It's been released. And my grandmother was very pleased, actually. So my cousin a few years ago wrote me an email.
It was, yeah. Go ahead, sorry. I don't know what I was going to say. It was more than a few years ago, but who cares? Okay, go ahead.
A handful of years ago. And the subject line, and I'm sorry there's many men in this room, but this was the subject line. It said, bikini wax or electrolysis, ? And the email started with, yo, what up? And then kind of my cousin wrote a long email about should she get her bikini wax? Should she consider laser hair removal? Should she get electrolysis? What did I think? And then she pressed send.
I know. I also love that she thought you were like the expert.
I was like, I wonder why I was the person she reached out to, but whatever. That's a different book we'll discuss. Anyway, she pressed send on the email, and it had auto-filled my grandmother's email address and the two line. And the best part is that my grandmother didn't bat an eyelash. She replied right away. She said she did not wax. She recommends staying far, far away from harsh products like Nair. And she couldn't wait to see my cousin that summer in Maine.
So good.
On that note, tell us more about your maternal grandparents.
Our maternal, so Jenna and Harold.
Yes,
So I think like somebody's asked me about the hardest chapter to write, and it was definitely about our grandpa, not mine. We both had him. Pa, Harold Welch, was from Midland, Texas, and we loved him. And as Barbara said, we saw him so much more. That's him.
He's so cute.
Oh gosh, not the yellow shirt tie picture again. That is a really questionable outfit choice. And I remember, I was like, Mom, how could you let me wear this? She was like, you wanted that outfit so badly. It was from the Limited too, no big deal. But anyway, so our pa, we saw him all the time because we lived with him. And every day he would come over. I know, and my friends are now just laughing at the picture, but.
I mean, it's both of us, really.
Okay, yeah, more me than you.
Mustard.
I like mustard. But anyway, so he would come over every day and say, Laura, are the girls home? And it was before we were, in our cribs asleep, and he would wake us up. So he was really part of the fabric of our lives every day. And then when we moved, we would come and stay with our Grammy and Pa for weeks upon end in the summer. So when we were around 12 or 13, which is, as all of you that have teenage daughters know, or wherever a teenage girl, it's a very difficult time for teenagers. And our grandpa we noticed his memory was changing, and all of a sudden it felt like he forgot who we were. And he had Alzheimer's, which was a very hard thing to watch, because he was a man that fought in World War II. He liberated a concentration camp, and he kept the pictures of the people he liberated in a box in Midland, Texas, because he never wanted to forget what he saw. He so believed in dignity. And of course, all of you know that Alzheimer's has no shame, and it provides a really undignified way of living. And so anyway, it was hard. And that chapter was hard to write, because to think about how that felt at 13 was difficult. But we adored him. So it was also this beautiful way to, as Barbara said, write about this family members that nobody knows, write about these people that nobody knows. And that was another unexpected part of writing this book.
And those memories were so vivid. Did you keep a journal when you were young? I know you have some journal entries. Yes. How did you recall those emotions?
Yes, well, I did have some very...
you could read one.
All right.
I love that you signed them Love, Jenna Bush.
Well, I know. You want to talk about that first journal you found of mine that was so sad?
I found Jenna's journal at our ranch. That's where all of our belongings are from growing up. And I found Jenna's journal last Christmas, I think, or last Thanksgiving, I believe. One of my best friends sitting in the front row was with me. And I ended up hiding it from Jenna because it said her New Year's resolutions were...
I was in the 4th grade.
She was in the 4th grade. Her favorite music was Billy Joel. Her favorite pizza topping was Canadian bacon. You'd written that in your journal.
It was good.
And then she said her New Year's resolutions were to get elected to student council.
It didn't happen.
To lose 4 pounds.
I know, that was
which is
the
what
sad
broke my
part.
heart. It was such a specific number.
And also, I spelled lose wrong.
And she spelled lose wrong, so I found it and I hid it because I never wanted her to find it. And then we were writing this book, and I was like, oh man.
I should show it.
I know where that journal is.
Yes, we wrote journals, but also like the memories like that, the hard memories that we wrote about are so clear because they were such dramatic moments in our life.
And then also the other great benefit is that
there's two of
we're
us.
twins and there's 2 of us. And so our point of view was always the same. There wasn't one older sibling who thought something wasn't cool. Like our memories are very, very shared. And so we would go on long hikes and brainstorm what we wanted to write, and by the end we could have filled in anything that the other person didn't remember. So it really was this fun story excavation together.
We also interviewed our parents, our grandparents.
I interviewed my head Secret Service man.
Aunts and uncles.
He had a very interesting memory.
He had a better memory than you did.
He had a better memory than
More
I did.
lucid. And we have lots of letters from our grandparents and our parents' text messages. And then this is one diary entry that I wrote on 5/2/96. Today has been a hard day for me. This morning, there was a picture of Barbara and me in the newspaper and an article on us going to AHS. How dumb is that? There are 1,000 freshmen going to AHS, so what makes us special? My last name? How unfair is that? The thing that really sucks is I'll be known for Jenna Bush the thing instead of Jenna Bush the person. This is so Judy Blume now that I think about it.
It is very Judy Blume.
I'll be known as the governor's daughter, not as who I am. There'll be lots of kids at AHS, and I know I won't be friends with all of them, so even by the time I graduate to some of those unknown faces, I'll still be known as the governor's daughter. I know it's not my parents' fault, but I'm taking it out on them. Because there isn't anyone else to blame. I've had a horrible week. My best friend Kate and I have had some trouble. We're not as close. She's spending a lot of time with a new girl named Bridget. I was a little dramatic. Anyway.
You did, however, state that you also liked Bridget, to be
Yes,
fair.
I do. I like Bridget. I still do. I don't know where Bridget is, but she was lovely.
You obviously, daughters of presidents, granddaughters of presidents, you must have had some incredible experiences, a lot of which you talk about in the books.
Yeah.
Tell us some of those highlights for you.
Well, we really had so many incredible opportunities. We got to travel around the world with our parents. I went to 5 continents with them. And we were in college and right out of college when our dad was president. And so that's such a great time when you're trying to figure out what you're interested in and how you want to be in the world. And we were just given such incredible exposure to really inspiring people across our country and around the world. And that actually is how I ended up working in global health. I run an organization called Global Health Corps. I never thought I would work in global health. I was studying architecture, and I thought I would work in design. That's what I'd always wanted to do since I was little. And the summer of my junior year in college, I had a design internship, and I took 2 weeks off to travel with my parents. And we were traveling for the launch of PEPFAR, which is the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, which you're all responsible for, and I hope you know that because you hopefully pay your taxes. Oh, well, that was a different trip.
With
The
LeBron.
U.S. Olympics with LeBron.
Who had a crush on my sister. If only she'd married LeBron, my life would be so much different. I'd be living in the dream.
It's the one that got away. You know, he was never really there to begin with.
No.
Jenna also really wanted me to marry
No,
a hairdresser
Barbara, okay,
because she wanted to get a blowout most of her days, so.
It'd be convenient. Would it not?
Well, I always say my husband would be the perfect husband if only he could give me a good blowout.
Totally.
So, yeah.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
I totally understand that.
Anyway, back to a very different trip. So anyway, PEPFAR provides free drugs for people living with HIV around the world. And at the time, if you were HIV positive and you were living on the continent of Africa, you, no matter how well connected, no matter how wealthy you were, you could not get access to the drugs that you needed to live. Pharmaceutical companies didn't distribute them there because they didn't believe they could make a profit. And so millions of people were dying, and you might remember headlines. There was this expectation that tens of millions of people would die. And so I went on this trip, and this is a very cliched story in that, you know, traveling elsewhere really opened up my eyes. And we landed, and there were hundreds of people waiting in the streets in Uganda for drugs that we had had readily available in the United States for years. And I just couldn't, I was so shocked by that injustice that these drugs existed, but if you were poor, you didn't get access to them. And my mom and I were standing at a clinic, and a Ugandan mother brought her little daughter to the clinic for this medication. And she had dressed her daughter up beautifully, and it was obviously a very big deal to her. And I was talking with them as I was standing with my mom, and I said to the other mother, "Your daughter's so beautiful. Is she 3? And she said something like, "No, she's not. She's 7. She's little not because she's young. She's little because she was sick." And it was such a stark contrast to me. This girl, by no fault of her own, was born at the wrong place at the wrong time. And I was born in the right place at the right time. I was born in the United States, and I was born healthy. And so I ended up changing my major and pursuing global health. And I was so angered by that injustice, but I was also so excited by the fact that these drugs existed. We weren't waiting for a scientist to come up with them. We have what we had in that moment, what we needed to keep people healthy. And we had the tools and the education and the information to make sure they could live a healthy and dignified life. And flash forward now, by the way, 15 million people are alive because of PEPFAR. And so that is a really incredible US policy that most people don't know about. That's very cool.
And you started the Global Health Mom, did you say?
Oh, well, then I started Global Health Corps.
Sorry.
I'm
like the sister that's like, now tell a little more.
Yes, and if any of you watch the Today Show and you love it, you should call NBC and tell them.
Oh, Barbara.
I've become her manager. Anyway, I started Global Health Corps about 8 years ago, and our organization is very much based on the Teach for America model, yet applied to global health. So we competitively recruit young leaders, these are many of them, from around the world, and they work with us for a year serving within health ministries or health organizations, solving the most pressing healthcare issues that affect those living in poverty. And throughout the year, they go through our curriculum focused on policy change, entrepreneurship, and advocacy, so that they can continue to make an impact on these issues throughout their careers. And it's been incredible. We've worked with about 1,000 young leaders from around the world, and 98% of them continue to work in global health. And a really cute anecdote around our vision is that we partner with Yale University. We do our trainings with them. And when one of our fellows named Adana, who's Nigerian, showed up for training, she stood up and she said, you know, it's going to be so convenient when I am the Minister of Health in Nigeria, and Celine is the Minister of Health in Rwanda, and Diego is running the Gates Foundation, because we're all going to know each other. We're going to have a shared vision for what the world can look like, and we'll work together to get stuff done. And I burst into tears, and I thought it was so cute. And Adana served her fellowship in Newark, New Jersey. And then it went from cute to real. When she completed her fellowship, she got accepted into Harvard to get her PhD. It's being paid for by the Ministry of Health in Nigeria, with the stipulation that she return to work for them. And so that's really what the impact will be when we have thousands of global health corps fellows and alums working to affect change throughout their lives.
This isn't as profound, but our first memory of the White House was our mom told us the other day, which I'm like, Mom, this cannot be accurate, but we were 7, and we were at the parade, and we were used to Texas weather, and it was cold in DC when our grandfather's inauguration was, and I don't think our mom put enough layers on us. Like if we had some long johns, we would have been fine. And so she said that we were so cold that we walked back to the White House by ourselves. I'm like, Mom, we were 7. You just let us unaccompanied, okay, bye. We're looking for the White House.
Yeah, there's supposed to be a big house and it's white.
1600, Pennsylvania. But she claims we walked home unaccompanied from the parade, but
that will be cleared up.
I can't imagine that that's true, but okay. So we walked in, and because we were unaccompanied, somebody had to kind of babysit us, which is true, so I don't know. We must be amazing navigators. But so we got in, and the woman that greeted us, it was the head florist. Her name was Nancy. And she said, come, let's go. We'll go down to the flower shop, and we'll make bouquets for your grandparents' bedside. Which, of course, for young DIYers when it was called crafts. Remember? It wasn't called DIY yet because it was just called crafts. Was so magical. We were 7. And, we also like to eat.
And mustard.
And mustard. I liked a mustard shirt. I admit it. So we made the bouquets, and then all these years later, she was the woman that did the flowers at my wedding to Henry. And so I know, that was nice. She passed away, sadly, but I think that really illustrated what we loved most about the White House were the people that worked there, some of whom worked there, most of whom worked there when our grandfather was president, so we knew them from the time we were 7 to, well, now, till we're old.
And where was Secret Service while you guys were navigating your way back to the White House?
I know.
Very concerning.
Maybe they walked us home. That could be
the missing piece.
The missing piece. Maybe they walked us home and then just dropped us off with Nancy.
They knew you were in good hands.
Yes.
And speaking of unaccompanied minor, I'm obsessed with the story of you making up a whole story as to why you ditched the Secret Service.
I know.
Please tell that story.
So y'all may be thinking this was when I was 21 and ditched the Secret Service, but I actually ditched them first, no, the only time, when I was, that I can remember. When I was in first grade, I had a friend named April Smith who I had this early girl crush on. I didn't even know what a girl crush was, but I had one. And she asked me if I could go swinging with her after school, go to the swings. And I was like, yes, of course I can, even though I knew my mom was picking me up from school. I'm like, of course I can swing. So we swang for what I thought was an hour. It could have been
I think it was
15 minutes of swinging. And I thought she was so cool, and I was just really living in the moment. And all of a sudden, my mom, who I just had hid from for 15 minutes and not even told her where I was, who was starting to get worried, ran. And she's never run before.
We've never seen our mom run.
She's not a runner. But she's lovely, and I see her running, and I'm like, oh no, this is gonna be some major trouble. Mom is running. And so I come up with this story that I'd been kidnapped by a man in a van. I believe, remember those like 80s movies you watched at school? I just regurgitated it. And my mother knew, of course, that I was lying, but that wasn't the problem. We had Secret Service at the time because our grandfather was president, and it was during something. And so the Secret Service man walked up and was like, "What? You were kidnapped?" And I'm like, "Yes." It was a gray van.
It was a great
He
man.
gave me some candy.
He had candy and a puppy.
He had candy, and I got in the van. And the guy was like, "Oh my God," all these scenarios were flashing in his mind. And my mom was like, "We'll discuss this at home," because she was like, "She's totally lying," But the man didn't know me well enough.
He was getting a sketch artist.
He was like, "Well, get a sketch artist." And my mom was like, "We will go home." And we got home, and she was like, "You march out there, and you told them, you were lying." I'm like, "Yes, ma'am." Like, I immediately admitted it. I was like, "I just didn't want to get in trouble for swinging." And she's like, "You go out, and you apologize." So I had to like march out, and I was like, "Sir, sorry, I actually wasn't kidnapped." So yes.
By a sinister man in a van. She had all the details
I know,
down.
I had all the details, and he was like, "Can we get a sketch artist?" And I think that's when I like looked at my mom like, I'm like, "He was bald?" I didn't know what to say. When we had to describe him, that was when the problem came.
What was both of your first memories when your parents sat down and told you that your dad was going to be running for president?
Well,
It's been a pretty day.
it was. We actually publicly apologized to our father 3 days ago for this.
We said we were sorry. Because
We are. In fact, we're almost ashamed to say this, but it's in the book. First, we burst into tears in unison.
That's what twins can do.
Then,
We told him he was going to lose.
I know.
We
it's
feel
shameful.
bad. We feel bad.
And then, this is the worst. We told him he was going to ruin our life.
We were dramatic. And even though I wrote that very dramatic Austin High School post, we had a very normal high school experience. And we would, we lived in the governor's mansion, but we could go everywhere. We didn't have Secret Service or protection. And we wanted to be normal college kids. But we did quickly realize what an amazing privilege it is to live history.
Yeah.
That one day was just rocky.
Well, and especially during 9/11, we're in school together. We were living in the
Yes.
same apartment. My dad made me
Yes.
move to a hotel.
Because he thought that
there was
there was like a rumor that our apartment complex in Austin was going to be a target. I'm
Yes.
like, it
And I
probably
think-
isn't.
No.
But I
parents-
moved to a hotel too.
Oh,
yeah.
well, I think you have more of a reason to. I was like, "Dad, I'm not living at this hotel. You can stop booking it." But for
How
you,
long did you live there for?
I never went there once. He had it for like a month. And he
I
kept-
only was there one night.
I know. Well, see, but there was an alley behind, and it was a crazy time for you,
Yes.
both, and you really share candidly your experience at Yale during this time in Secret Service.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, when we first got Secret Service, we were a little prickly to them. We were not excited about, we wanted to be independent. And our Secret Service did a great job. They held way back. They hired less people to be on our team so that they would be less noticeable. Likely, if you saw us, you wouldn't have noticed our Secret Service. They had younger, this was the head of my detail, Steve. They hired younger people, and they basically dressed like they were in college, except they all had a fanny pack on. And we were a little prickly towards them because we didn't think that we needed them. And then on September 11th, I, like probably all of y'all, had no idea what was happening. I woke up with my roommate. We had a clock radio, and it said that one tower had been hit, and at that point, we all thought it was an accident. And then we were getting dressed for school, and the second tower was hit. And 2 seconds later, Steve was at my door, and he knew that we needed to get away in case we were a target. And so we just ran out of my dorm. I didn't bring like my contacts with me or anything. And I went to an office building with Steve and my Secret Service detail, and they were all out of the New York field office because I was living in Connecticut. And the Secret Service office for them was in World Trade Center Tower 7. So it wasn't one of the ones that was hit, but it was one of the ones that collapsed. And I was sitting with them. We were just watching TV. We're in a sterile office building. And I was sitting with them as they were all calling to check on their families or calling to find their colleagues and make sure those that had gone to work that day were okay. Just as I was talking to Jenna and my mom and ultimately my dad when Air Force One landed. And from then on, I really saw them as my brothers. I mean, we all were grieving together and just together. I mean, we couldn't be separated. And we were all going through the same shock and also, wanting to connect with those that we love. And Steve had his wife and his 5-year-old daughter come to New Haven. We ended up going to a motel off the highway and stayed there that night. And Steve's daughter and wife came, and it was such a stark juxtaposition. His daughter had, of course, no idea what happened, and she was just so excited to have a slumber party with her parents in a hotel. And so she jumped wildly on the bed, and it was just such a stark contrast. And they were so sweet. They went and got my roommates, because I was alone and would just be there alone. And they went and got my roommates and brought them to spend the night with me, which was just such a very generous gesture that was unnecessary.
So sweet.
So sweet. And we're going to go back to Henry because he's always good comedic relief.
Yes.
Dating while your father is the president.
It's hard. I'm like fill in the blanks. But Henry is such a good sport. The first date, I'll just briefly, the first date, his car nearly was crushed by Marine One. He had to pick me up at the White House. He was so nervous.
He had to pull into the White House for their first date.
Yeah, that was hard. Second date, his car ran out of gas. And he had just got into a gas station and it started slowly inching back and then hit the Secret Service car. One date, this wasn't a date with me, it was a date with my father. He went biking with my dad, even though my dad was like, I don't want to take Henry. And then my mom elbowed him. He was like, okay, I'll take Henry. And they were riding a bike, and Henry—
Mountain bikes, my dad rides mountain bikes.
And Henry bought a Schwinn 10 speed from like college. And the chain broke off the bike. And my dad, of course, kept going and didn't even stop to wait for him.
Which meant that all the Secret Service and the Secret Service vehicles kept going.
And so he started speeding as fast as he could down the hill. And right when he was about to catch up, a Secret Service door opened on him. And so he said he flew 20 feet in the air, which means
he's flew 10 feet.
10 feet. 10 feet. And poor Henry. And he landed like a frog. And I was like, how was biking? And my dad was like, well, he needed a little medical care. But he was okay. And I'm like, Dad, did you try to have him killed? Anyway, there's more where that comes from in Sisters First. And Henry really is why is this all about me? I'm like, because you make good material. I'm sorry.
Obviously, you guys are a package deal.
Yes.
So what was the first thing you told Barbara about Henry? And what was the first thing you told Henry about Barbara?
Well,
I was with her when she met Henry. They met on our dad's campaign, and it was the first day we went into the campaign. And he and his girlfriend came and introduced themselves to us.
I got rid of her, don't you worry.
Jenna, no, you did not. She did not get rid of her.
I know. It just feels cool to say I didn't get rid of her. They broke up without me interfering.
Anyway, they came in and introduced themselves, and when they walked out, Jenna goes, of course the cute guy has a girlfriend. So I knew that she liked him, but I didn't think anything was going to happen. And then here we are.
2 children later. 2 children later. But he also had a very good move. When he finally did propose 5 years later,
he asked me for Jenna's hand in marriage before he asked my dad, which was a very sweet move. And if any of you here are dating a twin, I highly recommend doing that.
They're so cute.
I love it. I know we kind of touched on your work before and kind of what inspired you, which was the trip. But can you tell us a little bit more about kind of your jobs? And they are so starkly different, but also have some same similarities, and kind of what inspired you both to take the paths that you have.
Well, who knows what, I don't know I can't believe I'm doing the job I'm doing, but it's so much fun. And had you told me 15 years ago, I would have told you absolutely not. There were all those horrible freshman 15 pictures of me everywhere. But oh yeah, that's me with my work colleagues. And I feel so lucky because I really like my job. And I think it's a privilege to tell other people's stories. And, we ran from the press, literally ran, sprinted in the opposite direction, even from people like Savannah. But now Savannah Guthrie's my next door neighbor. Our daughters are like sisters. And even the other day, she was like, saw Henry on the street. She's like, bring the girls over. I'll give you a little bit of a break since I've been gone from them for so long. And I just think it's a great lesson in life that you never know like which way your path is going to go, and who people that you may have been sort of scared of, because I was kind of scared of her, can become your very, very dear friends. And I think that's a good lesson.
I shared why I worked in global health, and even though I didn't think I would work in the field of global health, I don't know if I was born this way or what, but I mean, I actually talk about some experiences where I've always felt like it was so lucky that I got to be alive. That sounds extremely dramatic, but I talk about losing a boyfriend to suicide in high school. And after that, I just always felt like I needed to live my life for myself and for someone that didn't get to. And so I just always knew that I could only pursue work that I thought made an impact, and not sit back and think this isn't the world I want to live in, but if I feel that way, then create the world I want to live in. And I don't know where it came from. I guess I've always been like that.
That makes me want to clap.
So that chapter where you go so deep and it's so meaningful, and I mean, both of you guys, it's just incredible. I was literally in tears that whole chapter. Okay, so you've both lived in Texas, DC, Maine. What is, I mean, I know, Jenna, I know you're like becoming a New Yorker.
So is Barbara's even more of a New Yorker than I am.
I know, so where do you guys think of as home?
Texas.
Even
though we do live 4 blocks from each other in New York, which is so much fun because Barbara can come over and see my girls, and they know her so well, and that's why that's why we even decided to do this. We get to spend that time together, but it's extra fun that we get to be on the road.
But we both travel all the time, and I would say Texas is home because that's where we lived. Most of our childhood memories are from, even though we've lived in New York for 10 years now, something like that. But I also feel like home, at least for me, is with my sister or a family. And then I have 3 of my best friends here, and they also just feel like home being with them. So just getting, being home can really be wherever if you're with the people that you love. Someone should needlepoint that on a pillow.
Or let's make a bumper sticker. Why not?
Did you guys write at your apartment? Like, did you write in Texas? Where did you do the majority of the writing?
At our apartment,
and on a lot of plane rides.
Yeah, and I mean, so we wrote in silo, and then we got together and compared chapters and put them together.
It's the best. I love it. And you have Mila and Poppy, who are seeing the best example of what sisterhood should be and can be. How do you see yourselves in them?
Yes, oh my gosh, so much. I mean, they are hilarious, and that is one of the reasons why we even thought about writing the book, because we want them to have and to know that they can have what we have. And I think having a sister or having great friends who can be like sisters is such a great gift. And we only really realized that when I had 2 of my own, or we like to say we had 2 of our own.
Yes, I consider them mine also.
Okay, I just want to really quickly, your parents, what is some, again, amazing stories about kind of your parents opening up about things that they had never even spoken to you guys about. Yeah. What are some of the best advice they've given you during this process?
Well, I think the best advice our parents, or the best gift they ever gave us, was to be completely ourselves, which is such a great gift, without the added pressure of perfection, which we realize now is such a great gift. Oh, they're so cute.
Jenna with her mouth open.
Oh, is that me?
Yeah.
I always thought I was the other one.
Well, in the book it says that you had your mouth open. I don't know. You would know better than I.
I think that one's you.
Oh, do they just stereotype me because I talk so much? I didn't write those captions.
You were tanner than me.
Born this way. But they allowed us to be ourselves, which I think is a really lovely and important gift for parents to give their children. I think it's harder than we sometimes give them credit for.
Yeah. It's amazing. That's the beauty of the book. It's not about perfection. It's about that life is messy and wild, and you guys talk about it all in such just a charming and nostalgic fashion. I love even when you talked about your dad, you know, it is simple. It was pure and it was in the moment, which I think can be really hard to do now with all the technology. So
I know,
it really
we have to
brings
put
you
it
back.
away as
Brings you back to
parents.
another time. We have some questions from the audience. I'm going to ask you really quickly.
Okay, do we have time?
Do we have time?
No.
No? Okay. One? Can I just, one?
Okay, one and then we have
What
a
is
flight
Don't
to-
Mess with Texas?
Oh, Don't Mess with Texas is a great slogan that I wish I could say I created, but we didn't. And it just means don't mess with Texas.
Excellent.
Right? Why would you mess with something as perfect as Texas? I wouldn't if I were y'all.
Thank y'all so
Thank
much.
you so
Elizabeth,
very
thank you,
much,
everyone.
Shari, Elizabeth. Thank you so much. Thank y'all.
We need a return.
What? Oh, yeah. Oh, good. Thank you.